Today under Lifestyle, we're going to replicate what I think is the perfect template for a beginner set of rock sliders. I picked up this 2021 Toyota Tacoma about 2 months ago, and I've been able to have a whole lot of fun in it for being a stock truck. So far, the only mod is a winch bumper, but today we're going to change that. For those of you that watch this channel because you're a beginner fabricator and you are looking for those early fabrication projects that can get you hours on your machine, that get you a really big return on investment, there are a few things that I think are better than rock sliders. So originally I was going to build a very complicated set of rock sliders for this Toyota Tacoma, and we still will, but that's gonna be version 2.0. I'm gonna build a set of aluminum rock sliders that are gonna be pretty complicated, but they're gonna look really good once I get a lift and tires on this. I don't wanna build that set yet because it's gonna look ridiculous on a stock Tacoma, but we can build a version 1.0 with very little investment in material. I mean, we're gonna build it as steel. It's gonna go together really quickly, as you're gonna see. And I think that this will be a cool opportunity because I do want to try and reach way more of you beginners in this 4x4 world with this Toyota Tacoma. So we're gonna do a simple version 1.0 that is gonna be so basic that you can literally adapt this design to any vehicle, car, truck, SUV, you name it, this design can be adapted. And then later on, once we get this truck built the way that I want it, we can do a version 2.0. Starting this project is pretty simple. Just break out the tape measure, pull some basic measurements, and start cutting. Since you're building these from scratch, the length is up to you. You can go all the way from tire to tire, or you can just cover the doors, whatever you think looks the best. This project is about to start moving forward really quickly, and before I start welding all this up, I just want to talk real quick about wall thickness and tube diameter and how I choose these different things, because I get asked about that constantly. How do I know what thickness to use or what diameter to use for the projects that I'm working on? I want to start by saying I'm not an engineer, so everything you see in this video, all my recommendations, just take it as some random guy on YouTube. But I can point you to a document from a race organization called Ultra 4, and I've read quite a few racing spec documents just to kind of educate myself over the last 10 years or so of what sizes are appropriate in what situations. And if you go to the Ultra 4 page, you can find a specifications sheet that is a list of requirements that your vehicle has to meet in order for you to race in one of their races. You scroll down to the chassis section, you will find requirements for tube diameter versus vehicle weight. And basically anything under 3,500, I believe, is either 3,500 or 4,000, somewhere in that ballpark. You can get away with 1.5 inch tube, and anything over that 3,500 to 4,000 margin, you have to use 1.75 inch. And 1.75 inch is also mentioned a lot in the NRA spec. It's mentioned a lot in the NASCAR spec. So if you read these different specifications, it can help inform you on how to It'll help you make the best decision on what size diameter you need for the job. They also have minimum thicknesses for the wall tube as well. Now, how I choose the wall thickness is I gotta decide, is this going to be getting impacted a lot, or is this gonna be tucked away in a way that it's not going to be? So for lower control arms, I recommend a 1/4 inch wall, and that 1/4 inch wall doesn't make it stronger to resist bending over a long span, but that 1/4 inch wall helps it take an impact and not kink the tube or put a dent in the tube. As soon as you dent a piece of tube, you start to ruin the structural integrity of it. Whereas upper control arms has the same amount of forces from the axle and from your chassis, but I would feel completely comfortable with 1/8 inch wall. The reason why is because it's strong based on its diameter, not based on the wall thickness. And because it's an upper control arm and it's tucked away from your obstacles, you don't have to worry about it taking an impact and getting dented. I hope that some of this makes sense. Essentially, the taller or the larger diameter you make your tube, the more it's going to be able to resist turning into a banana whenever you put forces over a longer span. And the longer the span is, the larger diameter tube you're going to need. So if you have a Suburban and you have super long set of sliders, 1.75 inch might not be enough. It could be, but I think if I was building a Suburban, I would do 2 inch just to make sure that all that force that could be pivoted on the center of that slider isn't going to turn it into a banana on the first obstacle. So I hope that this can help point you in the direction of how to choose diameter and thickness. Again, I'm not an engineer, but this is kind of the rationale. I average the stuff that I've read on Ultra 4 with all the experience that I've had of building stuff constantly and going off-road and testing them. Now, what thickness should you use on where you mount it to the chassis? I'm using 3/16. I'm trying to build this all as thin as possible and as light as possible. This is 3/16 plate. And the reason that I'm comfortable 3/16 is because it's not a very big distance between the edge of this piece here. So this is gonna mount on our frame. This is gonna mount to our slider. And there's gonna be forces that are going like in every direction based on where we're taking a hit. And it's not a very big distance between the hole that I'm gonna drill and mount our hardware through and the edge of this piece here. The longer that distance becomes, the more leverage that it has, and it's gonna be much more likely that you're gonna distort the piece or get deflection. So if you have a hole way over here and you are mounting way over there, I would recommend going to 1/4 inch or changing the design in order to accommodate a thinner material type. This set of sliders is not thick enough. I am using this as a test piece. I'm always trying to build lighter. So everything that you're seeing me use today, other than these plates, is 1/8 inch. And 1/8 inch is not thick enough for this. But I want to push the boundaries of this, and knowing that this is a wearable part for me, this is essentially a consumable part, it just needs to last a few months, and I'm curious how light and how thin I can make a part like this and how long it will last in the field. So don't do what I do. I recommend a minimum 3/16 wall thickness for something like a slider, but you know, just continue at your own risk, do some research, and consider the weight and the length of the vehicle that you're working on. Now we need to work on getting the base piece that we just made for the sliders connected to the chassis, and this can be just as easy or just as difficult as you want it to be. For me, I'm going to connect in 3 different locations based on what's in the way behind the part of the frame that we're mounting to. Remember, one side of your frame could have fuel lines or brake lines, the other side might have exhaust, who knows what could be in your way. So you need to plan the legs of your sliders accordingly, and I wouldn't expect them to be a complete mirror image on either side. If you can, take advantage of holes that already exist in the frame from the factory. Then just drill anywhere else you have to around that hole, hoping that you can do a bolt and nut combination. Anywhere that you can use a bolt but can't attach a nut on the back side, I would recommend using some self-tapping bolts. Self-tapping bolts should be used sparingly, but they're definitely handy in places that you can't get a bolt all the way through the frame. Sometimes you're going to need to build 1 or 2 of your mounting plates completely different than the rest of them. In this instance, there was 2 bolts that were already going through the frame to mount something on the inside. I utilized these 2 factory bolts and then added 2 holes on the outside in places that I could fit extra hardware. On both sides is complete. Well, somewhat complete. I have it mounted. So all 3 mounting flanges have been mounted to the frame. Everything is tacked together in a way that makes it really solid, and we'll pull it off here in a little bit and we'll finish weld it. But right now what I want to do is I want to add a round piece of tube that's going to go around the outside and kind of bring this up to give us protection right below the door. And I was actually thinking about it. This is going to be extremely similar to how I did it on this Jeep truck. This is going to be difficult to see, but if you look close, you'll see a lower rim that's protecting the lower part of the body, and then I have a 45-degree angle here, 45-degree angle there, and a round piece of tube that comes up just below the door to give us a little bit of extra protection. I think it's a really clean way to terminate a piece like this. I'm gonna probably have to put a little bit bigger gap on this Toyota because these frames flex a lot, but either way, it's the same concept. If you've watched my channel before, you know I'm a big fan of doing layout on the floor or layout on the table. This means that I just mark out basic measurements on the floor or on a table and lay pre-bent sections onto that layout. This makes it to where it's easy to predict as to where my bends are going to end up, and I know exactly where to cut for each piece that I'm working on. Now that I have the bends where I want them, all I have to do is put this back on the template that I laid out on the table, line everything back up exactly square, and then I can mark lines against the edge of the table. They'll now become the cut that we need in order to mate up to the flat surface of the lower part of this slider. Now I grind away a little at a time until these two surfaces meet up flat and we have a really tight fitment. We've reached a point in this project where pretty much all the hard work is behind us, and now we just need to accomplish a couple simple things. We need to add some support structure between the inner tube, which is the square tube, and the outer tube, which is our round tube. And the reason we want to do that is because we have this really wide span where this outer tube joins to the inner tube. And if we can reduce that span, it's going to be stronger, meaning that even if we just added one piece of scrap material in the center to join the square tube to the round tube, we're gonna make this way stronger because we've taken that span and we've divided it into two. Now, it's so light to add strength at this part of the process that I'm gonna add 3 places. So I'm basically gonna divide this up into quarters. I'm gonna add 3 different support structure pieces in line there with just some of the scrap tube. I haven't decided if I'm gonna go round or square yet, but I'll decide once I'm done shooting this little segment. And it's gonna make it way stronger. We're gonna have very little sacrifice. And then once that is complete, we can finish weld everything. I would recommend, if you're new to finish welding something like this, is welding the plates that mount to the chassis last, because that's the easiest thing to change if this piece tweaks on us a little bit, because there's gonna be some places where it's gonna expand a little, some places where it's gonna shrink a little, and you can get a piece that looks completely straight, and then when you go to bolt it up, none of your holes line up. So what I'm gonna do is finish weld everything, let it cool, finish weld everything but the inner plates, let it cool, and then I'm gonna bolt the center plate on there and make sure that all the holes line up before I finish weld the inner plates. So again, if there's any movement, all I would have to do is just cut a couple tack welds and I can shift those plates wherever it lines back up, tack it in place, pull the piece back off and finish weld. The next day, I let the paint cure overnight, but I have a concern. It is really, really cold out here, and I'm not completely confident that the paint has cured up as much as I want to before I install them. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my diesel heater, I'm gonna direct it at these 2 sliders, and hopefully with like an hour or so of heat on them, I should be okay. I could be okay now, I just don't want to risk it and have to do a bunch of touch-ups. So I have a new grill and I've got some decals that I want to install in this Toyota. I'm going to pull the Toyota in real quick, and while we're heating up these sliders, I'm just going to throw on some decals and a new grill, and then whenever we throw these sliders on, we can check out the Toyota in all of its glory. If you've never applied graphics to one of your vehicles before, I think that this is one of the easiest ways to change the look of the truck and not break the bank. Unfortunately, I chose the wrong decal, so they sent me the TRD Sport decal instead of the TRD Off-Road, but it still looks good enough. I'm going to put it on and I'll just order what I need later. I've always been a big fan of the look and styling of the Ford Raptor, and I know this is a Toyota Tacoma, it's not a Ford Raptor, but when I saw this grill and I saw these decals, it felt like such a great way to make this Toyota Tacoma look a little bit more off-road. In terms of a return on our investment of time, of money, of resources, it's hard to beat a set of very basic sliders like this and adding vinyl and adding a grill. With the sliders, I think just about anybody could build these. All you need is an angle grinder with a cutoff wheel and any welder. You could build this with a stick welder if you wanted to, and you don't have to use a tube bender if you don't have a tube bender. And you can also, I used to build stuff like this with that $100 pipe kinker from Harbor Freight. I still have the thing. And you can still build really good stuff with really cheap tools if you're motivated to and you're creative enough. So I think that for those of you that are looking for an early fabrication project to just kind of cut your teeth and build something that doesn't cost a whole lot of money, something that's really effective in terms of helping your vehicle look more off-road and in terms of protecting that vehicle from obstacles, it's gonna be hard to beat a decent set of sliders like this. Now, to answer the question that I get asked all the time, and I answer all the time, the paint and stuff that I used for these sliders, I'll just put in the Amazon shopping cart. The paint that I use, the primer that I use, I'll even put the stuff that I use to prep the surfaces and whatnot. So if you're looking to build something like this and you want a finish that looks similar to this, you can just go to my Amazon shopping cart and it'll all be right there. Also, for those of you who are curious about where I got the grill and where I got the vinyl, I got it from a place called Taco Vinyl. I will link each sticker that I used and I will link the grill that I used for this video in the description. So anything that you saw me use in this video, you can just go through and click and it'll take you right there. Now I need to load this truck up because I'm headed to Mexico tomorrow, and I'm gonna go try and get on the rocks, see what this stock Tacoma is capable of, and I've got a really long road ahead of me, so I need to get packing. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You're gonna be seeing this Tacoma around a lot. My Discovery is almost done, so if you like overlanding, the Discovery overlanding stuff is on the way, I promise. I'm planning trips with it. It's gonna be a sweet build. Also, if you're into outdoor adventure content, there's gonna be a lot of that this year. So if you're into any of those things, just make sure you stick around and subscribe to the channel. If you wanna help support our channel, you can go to thedirtlifestyle.com. We have t-shirts, hats, neck gaiters, all that stuff. And if you wanna help support us on Patreon, we have a link to that on our website. If you wanna follow me on social media, I'm @DirtLifestyleNate. We'll see you next time.